It's Stik Figa, man, rap nerd from the Black Burbs, and I'm back with another episode of Pookey, the podcast that is accompanying my new project in collaboration with my man DJ Sean P. Now, one of the most important themes about this record is identity. Going along with identity is comfortability, comfortable in your own skin and in who you are. And I got to talk with my man M Slago about that. And it really made me think of something I grew up with. My dad always told me, don't scratch if it don't itch, and don't tap your feet if you don't like the music. And I think that's an important lesson, and it's something that I think Slago learned as well. So we're going to go into this episode and talk more about that. Don't forget to pick up the album, Yatta Dee, Yatta Da. I messed it up at the end, but you can cut it or something. I don't know.
Shout out to my cousin Pookey.
Okay.
But once again, I'm humbled, man, that you were willing to take the time out to chop it up with me about this endeavor. So ultimately, you got a chance to hear the record, right?
Yup.
You got a chance to hear the record. Thank you, man. I appreciate you listening. But what I wanted to get at, man, ultimately, the goal of that project is to kind of discuss what it is to be a young man and then to become an adult man in America, and in specific, what that looks like for those of us African descent in the United States.
Right.
And I just wanted to talk to you about what that was like for you growing up, man. What was it like for you? I'm from the Kansas City area, and you're from the Dallas area. Is that correct?
Well, I've lived in Dallas forever. I can't even say I'm an honorary native because I put my time in. But I'm from Nashville. I'm from Tennessee.
So you're originally from Nashville, okay?
Yep.
Right on, right on. And I spent time in Memphis, Tennessee, so we got the state of Tennessee in common.
Yeah, we got some ties there.
Yeah, for sure. What was your adolescence like growing up, and what sort of awareness did you have growing up in Nashville?
It was I had a early awareness. I can say that I'm grateful enough that my parents they know how they say we did all right. You know what I mean? They did all right.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a rough upbringing by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same breath, I got a lot of family members that didn't do all right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one thing I had early that has been kind of advantageous for me, I think over my years on earth is like I've always had balance. In our neighborhood that we ended up moving to for the bulk, not even the bulk, probably the first maybe 5 years of my life, 5 to 6 core years of my life, we were in a decent neighborhood, and there weren't too many faces like mine. So I was privileged to have that and go to schools until they did like rezoning and everything, where I was like one of the only brown faces for like a year. And then after that, though, they started busting kids in from other sides of town. So I got a chance to integrate a little bit more on a day-to-day basis. But if it wasn't on my day-to-day thing, chilling with my family, like I stayed rooted always. So I was able to rock on this side with a certain demographic, and I also was able to rock on another side with another demographic. So I always had that awareness, and I always understood at an early age that being able to balance is key. And that's going to be something that, again, at a very early age that I recognize is going to serve me well in years to come. Fast forward, you take, we'll say high school years or whatever, then you get another type of different social construct where you have athletes, you have quiet, secluded individuals, you have the fantastic scholastics, and then you also just have you have nerds. You know what I'm saying? And luckily I could rock in all sectors, and it was good. Like I was never out of place because I hooped, so I was never out of place with the athletes. I did well. Like I did well scholastically, so I could rock with the AP students or whatever the case may be. I always not always, but I got to a point in my life where I began to listen more than I talk, so I could get with the secluded and more quiet, you know what I mean, class, and then I could rock out with the nerd stuff too.
Yeah.
So like I just always had that balance, man. So I always had a supreme awareness, but just spending some time in Memphis, it might be a little bit different in Memphis, but being in the South, like what's considered the true South, there's always there's another level of things you
Yeah.
got
A
to keep in
layer
mind
to it.
always. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
another layer. So I always had that in the front of my mind too. So, luckily, man, I had a balanced upbringing. And it served me well so far.
Okay. How would you say that? Because you mentioned that you were able to clearly identify these kind of person groups and these people who had these specific interests. How did that reflect against your own individual identity? Like when you reflect on that time of kind of coming of age, do you remember that feeling smooth? Did you remember feeling that feeling anxious? Did it ever put you in precarious situations, or how did you navigate that in a way that was comfortable with your own identity? I guess is what I'm saying.
Um, for like you got a chance, we got a chance to chop it up a few times.
Mm-hmm.
The brother Sean Patrick, he know me pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, I don't think it was much of a challenge because I've
Mm-hmm.
always been pretty even keeled. It take a lot to get a rise out of me. Um, so with that, it never was a thing. It just kind of was,
Mm-hmm.
"Yo, this is how I'm moving," and there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't any stresses there. And I think understanding that balance and being very self aware.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is this, and I think this might even sum it up. Is my ultimate goal is to always be a gentleman, and my definition of a gentleman is somebody that makes everybody around them comfortable. And that's how I move. Like I move with that at the forefront always. So it never was a thing for me, it never was a problem, it never was a stressor. If I come in cool and because I've been in these different pockets before, I know how to approach it. I don't talk to anybody the same way. The message is always going to be the same or because it's coming from me. You know what I mean? But how you deliver the message, sometimes I'm able to meet people more times than often, honestly. I'm able to meet people where they are. And it makes a big difference. Bless you. So yeah, it never was a thing for me. It just was always, be a gentleman, make people around you comfortable, and that's it.
Right on. So more and more, there's this discussion whether it's, and I'm curious sometimes if it's only happening online or is this happening in real life. There's this constant conversation that's going around. What is manhood? What does it mean to be masculine? What does it mean? What is toxic masculinity? What is this, that, and the other? And a lot of that, at least when it comes to black folks, is rooted in some history that does include some uh some some dignity being removed from us early on. So it seems like there's definitely some pushback and some back and forth and some new ideas. What kind of ideas do you have about masculinity? And or does it have anything to do with race as well? And how do you view either that conversation, or what kind of definition have you kind of arrived at now that you've grown into the man you are today?
It's funny, like the timing of that is crazy. Social media and the algorithm is something serious. I had just saw Talib Kweli, peace to him. I just saw him post something, a clip of a brother breaking down a comment or two that somebody made about alpha males and beta males and
All that old
some
silly
kind of
stuff.
way
Yeah.
Hooters was involved in it. I don't know how Hooters got in the
Oh, I
mix,
saw
but
that.
you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
some kind of way that was all involved, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
saw that this morning. So the timing of that is crazy. But I think, I do think that a lot, not a lot, but I think a heavy piece of for, and I say brown, because I really believe in speaking truth to power. I don't see black when I see you. I don't see black when I see me. I see brown. So I say what I see. I speak truth. So hopefully that catches on to more people. You know what I mean? I think it's a self-definition thing too, but that's another
That's
conversation.
a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. But I do think for brown people and brown men specifically, I think there is this subconscious and underlying need for some of us to really establish ourselves in whatever that may be or whatever that entails. So whether it's being the most visible in a room, if it's being the most desired in a room, if it's being the most intimidating in a room, whatever that case is, whichever way you identify with, this is how I can put my stamp and secure my masculinity to or prove my masculinity to whoever is around me. I do think that there's an underlying layer of necessity there for brown men, and I think it definitely can be unfortunate in a lot of cases because, like, keeping it all the way funky, man. We no, we got kids, and I have a son and a daughter. But
That was my
specifically for
next
my son,
question.
I've had conversations with
Yeah.
him. He's borderline preteen at this point, and I've had conversations with him already, kind of dipping his toes in the pool. I'm like, yo, it's only really one or two things in this world that'll make you make dumb decisions because you want to prove something, and that's women and money. And even the money kind of goes back to women sometimes, in most
And I
cases.
sometimes link those to pride.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So
this fear of being embarrassed or being in a space and not being recognized.
right, but that goes into like, because it kind of goes to the conversation, the little post we were talking about early, like that primal aspect of it, or the animalistic aspect of it is, if your pride is broken in the front of a female, in front of a woman, then that's insult to injury, right? I would bet that most men can deal with feeling disrespected and having their pride kind of, set aside in private or in a smaller audience that don't involve any women, and it ain't gonna be that big of a deal.
Right.
But when you throw the adoration and the attention of a woman,
Ooh.
then you amplify the situation.
Yes, sir.
So that, I think, is where that comes from. It's, I need to establish myself because I've been suppressed for so long. Do we say disenfranchised anymore? I'm gonna say it now. We've been disenfranchised for so long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Accurate. It's
That
accurate.
I need to establish myself and have that presence. But what that boils down to is, at the bottom level of it, if you get down to psychology and the id of it all, that core necessity in your psychology, in your mind and your psyche, it's, I need to make sure that I'm in a space that I'm desired. Period. I'm in a desirable state. And I think that toxic masculinity and that conversation really stems around that. It's the purpose and the reason of it, I don't think has ever changed. But I think the urgency that we feel comes from the suppression and the years of dirt that's been done.
Yeah. I'll just piggyback off of that. Yeah, I think a lot of it just has a lot to do with being made to feel like we're not being our complete selves in certain spaces, in white spaces. I think a lot about how, you can be your authentic 100,000% self at home.
Yeah.
And home has a lot of different meanings, but the core meaning is, mom, dad, sister, brother, cousin, your tribe.
Yeah.
And then when you're outside of your tribe, there are different expectations and there are different dangers. So I think a lot of times for us, we find ourselves shrinking in these spaces. And I think more recently, though, that's been kind of lifted, and as people become more comfortable with themselves, they continue to show that 100% version of themselves is completely acceptable, and people just got to get with it or get out of the way. Saying that, in the tribe, usually we're given names. So the reason the record I released is called Pookey is because that is my family nickname, right? Um, and when I think about it, it used to be a real serious source of embarrassment outside of my tribe, right?
The tribe.
In my house, it's fine. But when mom comes to pick you up from school or you done got in trouble, you gotta get picked up by the principal, and she yelling, Pookie, what you done did? Etc. etc. It's like, oh man, like I don't want people to know that's what people call me. Do you have a family nickname, or are you willing to share it with the audience today?
Actually, man, I don't. I don't really have like a family nickname. I do have a couple spot nicknames though, like with certain family members, certain members of the tribe. But overall, like there's not a classic one. Like with my full name, being Christopher, then it's just you already get a pad. They're just gonna call you Chris.
Right.
And then there's variations because there's little Chris and there's big Chris. I've always been a little Chris. When you have to delineate between which one in the family. But
little Chris, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's about as good as it gets. I will share one though. My uncle Bird, rest in peace. Talk about tribe names, Uncle Bird, Uncle T Bird. He called me Buzzer. He never had children. And I was his youngest nephew. I'm the youngest nephew. So none of the older nephews or my cousins had a particular tribe name that tied to him directly. And I take a lot of pride in knowing that I was Buzzard to tie with T-Bird. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's cool. That's a cool one for me.
Yeah, and I think about the power of names. That's the thing about it is I personally attached that name to my family. So as I got older, it stopped becoming a source of embarrassment and it became a source of, familial love that I could recognize.
Yeah.
And when people use that name for me, it means this. And it gives me this sort of emotion. So that's really dope. That's a dope story about your uncle, man, because he loved you so much since he didn't have his own children that he said, "No, this is, you know what I'm saying? This is mine. I claim him."
I never got a chance to ask him if that was. I didn't want to put nobody on the spot like none of my cousins or nothing, because I sure would have rubbed it in their face. I'm that guy too. But I never got a chance to ask him, like, yo, like why? You know what I mean? Why'd you choose that nickname? But for my own purposes and reasons, just knowing what I know, like I take a lot of pride in knowing that. In my mind, he thought enough of me to be like, yo, this is my man.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how did you come up with speaking of names, it's a hip hop rite of passage.
Of course.
To come up with your rap name, your producer name, whatever pseudonym you come up with, your signer, your John Hancock.
Yeah.
For what you do in your art. How did you come up with Slago? Hard A.
Man, it was so I'm a big fan of blaxploitation films.
Awesome.
So in the Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier trilogy, there's a character named Mongo Slave.
Got you.
So that was the name that I chose to go forth in the culture with.
Yeah.
But then I found out there was a cat in New Jersey called Mongo Slave, the Superfly Thug. And I was like, nah, I need to do something different then.
Yeah.
Just so happens, I got a good friend of mine, another producer MC, Salvation out of Detroit. Peace to him. And he used to call me Slago as a joke because Fago Pops, that's the thing up in Detroit and Michigan. Better made chips and a Fago, you good.
Yeah.
So he used to call me Slago because judging by my attire, I'm not one for flash. Like I ain't really the big colorful dude. Like I keep it real earth tone. So he used to joke and call me Slago because the colorful flavors or whatever. So when I started thinking about changing my name, I'm like, yo, I'm just gonna go with M Slago.
That's
because
hard.
and we had never written it out, so I never knew how it looked. But I want to take the Y out just for obvious reasons. I don't want Fago coming
Mm-hmm.
after me. So
For sure.
they had they had Insane Clown Posse too. I didn't want no
Yeah,
smoke.
you didn't want that
So
relation.
nah, not at all, Jack. But that was it. So M Slago came as a rendition from Mongo Slade, and then the fun, the fun joking name that my brother Salvation would call him, and that's how
Oh,
I ran with that.
that's super dope, man. That makes me think too, man, of like the importance of location. Like it was important for me when I started making music, representing where you're from is such an important thing. For me it was a big deal because I was from a market that was super small that no one really knew anything about or brought attention to. Do you think that this is just kind of a question that came to me was, do you think that the internet bringing hip hop to everybody was a good thing in that we lost a lot of like regional sound? Like now I'm out here in Dallas, and my first interaction with Dallas rap music was Big Tuck.
Yeah,
I'm
Southside the
lying.
realest.
I'm lying though, because it was really DOC. But DOC was like
Oh yeah, but we didn't know then though.
I didn't even know he was from Dallas.
Right, we didn't know when we first heard DOC. I'm with you. I'm in the same boat.
All right, so I think Tuck was the first time I identified like, oh, if you're from Dallas, there's a very good chance that you sound like this. This is the style of
Yeah,
music that you are likely to be creating. Just like New York had boom bap. It was hip. Like when you hear boom bap music, you immediately
right.
go, "That's from New York. This is from there." Do you think that's a thing that's positive or negative now that regionalism has kind of died down because of the internet?
I don't think it's a negative at all. I
Okay.
think it has all the positives and all the potential in the world. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that because in the greater scheme of things, that that access is still new.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gonna hammer itself out. I don't think it's a negative though. In the meantime, growing pains are definitely happening,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's a negative by any means. Because one thing for sure, two things for certain is if you think about it, if you look at specifically, I'm gonna say the West Coast. The
Mm-hmm.
West Coast style is intact. It hadn't changed,
They still pushing it.
and they
Yeah.
still rock it. Like it hasn't changed at all. Well, I won't say it hadn't changed. It hasn't strayed from the core of what made it what it is. So, me and my man, me and my homie T Diddy, man, Tonesy from Old Jones. For those who are familiar with the Old Jonesy instrumental album, we talk about this often. The West Coast, they have maintained their core. Of course, elevation is going to happen if you're doing it the right way. So there's always going to be elements to kind of bleed in and out, but the core of it is the same, and it rocks and jams just as hard as it ever did. And it will
Mm-hmm.
continue to do so, I believe. The South, because the South, quote unquote, has had the longest run at the top
Mm-hmm.
of the hip hop pyramid, as far as regions go,
Yeah. Say that.
a lot of that influences seem to, spill out in other areas. So there's a blurred line there. But I do think that I believe the time moves circular, and I understand how growing pains work. So I think that with time and letting the things happen as they're happening now, in the next, I don't put a time frame on, but in a few years from now, I think we're going to see a whole new elevation and emergence of types of styles is going to propel things even further.
I
Because
hope
everybody
so,
gonna get
man.
tired of sounding the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I sure hope so. I feel like ever since drill took off in Chicago, that to be a drill and I may be assigning too much weight on drill music, but
Yeah,
I can't help but feel like its popularity has led to some very misguided choices on the street. Guys is
agreed.
naming the guys they shot at, naming it the guys they plan to shoot at, and putting that stuff all out in the public. I just can't help but feel like we talked about being young people who, to circle back and to make it a full circle conversation, you're dealing with people's pride, you're dealing with people's egos, you're
Yeah,
dealing with women, and this elevates or exacerbates this need to prove oneself. And then sometimes it's violently,
Yeah.
So,
and even with that, I think that still goes into something that we've seen in hip hop over time too. Is like once you see something that works, or you see that blueprint, then you're gonna follow it. A lot of people follow that. You know what I mean? It depends. Again, and this also boils down to desire and passion and purpose. But if you just in it, you know what I mean, trying to get some clout or get some attention or some fame, then you're going to take whatever's working. So whoever those early drill artists were that whichever ones hit, and
Chief Keef,
the brothers saw that, they were like, "Yo, that's what we going. We going that way." Especially his hometown, we going that way.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Why not?
Yeah.
There's no reason to make a burger a different way. They've been making burgers the same way. Only thing we started changing up was condiments and you know what I'm saying, toppings. But at the end of the day, a burger is a burger. Is
yo, we putting the pepper on this one, yo. This is what a
pepper. More pepper. Oh, we use different kind of bacon though. Like I go to this is completely random, but I go to this overpriced gourmet burger place by my job right now in downtown Fort Worth. Every time I get it, I feel like a sucker because I'm like, man, this is really just a burger, man. I could have made this. I feel like the Eddie Murphy skit when he is like, you got that at the house. I turned into that guy.
Yo, for those who don't know, for the people listening and tuning in and checking it out, post facto or whatever, yo, the burger scene in Dallas is stupid.
It's very serious.
It's crazy. Like the Dallas Fort Worth burger scene is serious. Like here, and that since I moved back to Nashville, the chicken scene here is ridiculous.
You know, Nashville has a very. Does Nashville really have that very like intense like hipster energy happening in it? Like I've always heard that, but I don't know how true it is.
Not really. Not really. There's pockets, but there's pockets everywhere. Yeah, but not really.
Hipster community kind of becomes standard nowadays.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, just with the way things are now, for what you consider to be hip or be hipster, a lot of those elements are just kind of widespread across everywhere. And Nashville definitely has its pockets. Nashville is changing a lot, though. There's a lot of establishments or established areas and neighborhoods and monuments and things of that nature that it don't matter so much anymore, which is sad. But, that's kind of unfortunately one of the things will change. The only thing that's constant, it's sometimes you gotta get rid of some of that to make room for some of the new. It stings, but some things I wish I would have liked to see stay. But it is what it is, sad to say.
Right on. Well, we're gonna wind it down, man. I had this question prepared for the guests.
You got notes, man. You can't be coming in here with notes, man. That ain't cool.
Man, I got notes, man. I'm trying to be. Look, Sean. Look, man. Sean got me being professional. Okay, Sean got serious production happening. He's got plans and ideas. As soon as this gets done, it's gonna get chopped up in all these ways. It's gonna be very crazy filters and all kind. Just prepare yourself to see yourself a certain way.
Before you ask this question. Because I'm looking at the quality of the camera, I'm looking at the ambiance of the back. Don't edit this either, Sean. Like the ambiance of the background. And
he said, "Don't edit this."
Don't edit this. It's wonderful, and I can see his influence. I can see the effort. I can see the attention to detail. We hear it.
Yeah.
And I'll say this too, because we didn't even talk about the record much at all. But the attention to detail and the record of what you were trying to convey and what he was able to put underneath that is spot on. And I think for what you're doing in these conversations now, the ambiance, the quality is spot on for the conversation and the questions and things that we've been talking about so far. So definitely shout out to the brother DJ Sean Patrick.
Man, DJ Sean Patrick is the executive producer of everything happening. All I did was rap. I showed up and I put words together and I was black in 1995 and I wrote about it. That's really all I brought to the scenario. You feel me?
Hey man, that was enough though. That was enough.
It was
But,
enough.
you know,
It was enough.
That was enough.
No, shout out to Sean, man. He's hiding in the back. He's trying to play it humble, but his influence is definitely watermarked all over this. So thank you, Sean. Yeah. He playing it cool still too. He like, yeah, you know,
Yeah, you welcome,
I do's
man.
this. I
Say
do
less.
this. There he
man.
is.
Say less.
There he is.
That's my
Say
man.
less. You know
You
how I do.
talk about tribe and community, man. Like
Yeah.
going the few times I got a chance to, like, whenever we get together, it's a riot straight up and down. But when I would come to his crib, like, it's so comfortable. You sit down, you get, slump. You might pass gas in there. You just never know. Like, you just get real comfortable.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of farting in here. And he says it's all good every time. There's people who will fight you over that, but this guy,
nah, Sean lets
cool.
Hey, yo, if you record with Sean, he will let you fart.
He will let you
Straight
fart. Don't delete this part. This is actually the most important part of the whole thing. We talked all about, Black. I didn't know. We talk about farting in the studio. This is the most important. The most important part. Nah, the final question is, if there was one thing you could tell, there's a time machine. You can go back to a pivotal time in your life and upbringing. You want to tell young Slago something, and you only got, because in the movies, it's got to be dramatic. So you only got this much time to tell him, the young Slago, what do you say to him after he figures out that is you? Because that happens in the movie too. You're really me.
You got to
There's
confirm
no way.
this.
Yeah,
you whisper something in his ear.
Really
You like, oh yeah, it's me for real. It's you, but it's me
for real. Prove it that you're the one. And yeah, after you get all that out the way, the time is running out. You got to jump back into the portal. What do you tell young Slago?
The thing I tell the younger me is, don't second guess it. Go for it. Period. I'm a self-identified overthinker. It's a gift and a curse. Mm-hmm. So it's a gift and it's been a gift in more situations than it's been a curse. But in some of those instances, that overthinking and taking too much time before you take action, you can lose out on some things or miss out on certain things. So that would be the message. Hey, don't overthink it, man. Go for it.
Don't overthink it. That's such an important message. I think many of us need to hear it, myself included. I still have a terrible habit of trying to break something all the way down to the tiniest particle, and then I miss out.
Yo,
even if I don't miss
about that before, like you and I.
Yeah, me and you've had that conversation. Yeah, it's like, but sometimes, man, that intuition is the best. I call it God. People call it different things, but that intuition, that inner knowing, go with it. My daddy would say, should have went with my first mind.
With your first mind,
that's
absolutely.
Go with your first mind. That's the old wisdom version of trusting your gut and all the stuff you hear in the corporate books. Go with your gut, man. Go with what you know.
All that stuff. Jellies, you know what I'm saying? That's my son. Feel it in my jellies.
I feel it in my jelly. Just go, man. Just go sometimes, man.
Shout out to my cousin Pookey.
First, I want to thank all my guests for being so open and honest with me and having a conversation. If there's any thoughts you want to share with us, go ahead and leave a like or comment in the little box underneath where you leave comments and stuff. And Pookey out now. Play this in your whip, shawty. That's it.